My next guest is actually the president and chief executive officer of the America First Policy Institute. She's also very familiar with the Trump administration's accomplishments. Brooke Rollins, thank you so much for joining our program.
Well, it's a real honor to be with you, Grace, and I love your show. I love everything you do, and I really appreciate the opportunity to join you.
Oh, thank you so much. Brooke, the first thing I have to ask you, and I know you're not going to hold back, is what did you think of the speech last night?
Well, it was very expected, but I tell you what, I hope that the millions of people that watched it can see it for what it was. And I have to say, I think that it was the beginning of the end of the Biden administration. It was almost a suicide note in terms of them basically writing their own history of a one-year term in the White House. He opened up the floodgates of a new era of spending. He's taking our inheritance, my children's inheritance, my future grandchildren's inheritance, and he's spending it down. He's clearly not a steward of the American people. He's a steward of the special interests. I mean, we saw it over and over and over, from his plans for free health care to his plans for free child care to his plans for free college. All that really means is a complete remake of our economy and taking out from, the hands of and the pockets of good Americans who work hard, who put food on their children's table, who send their kids to school, basically taking their money and redistributing it. It was really a manifesto for socialism, and the people of this country won't stand for that.
And Brooke, I was pretty amazed because some of the mainstream news networks did their polling afterwards, and the polls weren't great for Joe Biden. We know that most people watching any of those addresses, whether it's Trump or Biden, you usually get a pretty friendly audience if they're willing to sit through your entire speech. And even with that being said, he polled fairly poorly. And I started thinking about it. Everything he said was radical. I mean, from gun control to climate change, everything was radical. But to your point, I think the part of it that even, let's say, young liberal millennials probably were turned off by was the talk of taxing people. Because I don't think you have to understand taxes that thoroughly to think to yourself, this is in some way at some point going to hurt my wallet too.
Well, that's right. And it's interesting, Grace, and I was such an honor to be President Trump's domestic policy chief. I worked alongside him for 3 years. I saw, and before that worked in Texas on the same set of issues, right? Lower taxes, more freedom, more liberty, more prosperity for all Americans, but especially those living on the margins who need that job, that good job and good health care and school choice for their children. I mean, I did that and worked on it in Texas, continued in the White House. And the amazing thing about the last 4 years of the administration and the last administration, obviously, is what we saw in terms of results. We know what works. And so even if, say, a soccer mom from Plano, Texas, or a small business owner from Detroit, Michigan, even if they didn't love the president and didn't love the tweet, whatever it was, at the end of the day, the policies and the results of what occurred in the last 4 years were a game changer. And so I think you're right. I think the young millennials, I think the independents who may not have loved some of the personality of the last 4 years, but really saw the policies working, I think they watched last night, and I think they said, no, thank you. I think the sprint of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, the sprint to the left, the sprint toward socialism, the sprint toward this radical agenda, again, I think the people won't put up with that. I think we're going to see a flip in the House and the Senate in 2 years, and I think you're going to see a take back of the White House in 4 years.
I hope you're right. I'm speaking with Brooke Rollins from the America First Policy Institute. Brooke, speaking of that, he actually did make mention of some of the economic decisions that Trump made as president. And he kind of tried, what I heard it as, is he tried to tell people that didn't really happen. That prosperity we saw, that wasn't real. You misjudged that. You didn't understand what was really happening was we were actually going into debt. And I'm not saying that there wasn't debt involved, but people saw their 401ks increase. People saw, people get jobs and people get work. So I thought that was a really bold move by him to basically say, all that good stuff that you guys liked in the Trump administration, not only are we not going to do it, but it actually never even happened.
It's so true. We used to joke around in the West Wing a lot that the only Democrat we can find to say nice things about the Trump economy. And keep in mind, we had more jobs available than people to fill them.
Exactly.
We had, before the pandemic hit, we had the best economy, arguably, certainly in the world, but potentially in the history of the world. I mean, it was remarkable to see what had been set up through deregulation and cutting taxes. But we used to joke in the West Wing that the only Democrat we can find to say positive things about the Trump economy was Barack Obama, because he tried to take credit for it.
Yeah.
I don't know, Grace, if you remember that. And,
yes.
And now you see it. Now you see it happening again. But this is the obfuscation. This is the complete smoke and mirrors that the left and the Democrats constantly play in, because they know our policies are righteous, and they know what we stand for and what we accomplish for the American people is truly, truly what our founders intended. It is truly the best for all Americans, and they know that they lose if we can get the message to the people, because it really is an incredibly compelling message that, frankly, we proved out in the last 4 years. So I'm not surprised to hear Joe Biden kind of put up the smoke and mirrors on that, and we'll continue to hear it over the next few years. But it's up to us. It's up to you, Grace. It's up to the America First Policy Institute. It's up to all of your listeners to ensure that everyday Americans understand, A, what's at stake, and B, what the right solutions are.
And that's something, Brooke, that I hear from my listeners a lot, because talk radio, as great as it is, we do get a reputation for just complaining all day and, playing sound cuts and poking fun, but not actually offering solutions. And I don't want to be like that. My boss, Howie Carr, has never been like that. He always tries to lift people up. And the thing I hear most from people is, well, what do we do? Well, what do we do? And I think you just pointed it out, which is you just need to keep letting people know. I tell my siblings all the time. I tell my friends all the time. I send them articles. I know it annoys them, but I want people to understand what we're dealing with, because it is very scary. And speaking of that, Brooke, I would like to play you a cut here from Joe Biden. I want to get your take. This is cut 8, Jared.
For too long, we've failed to use the most important word when it comes to meeting the climate crisis: jobs. Jobs. Jobs.
Do you think the pipeline workers would disagree with him on that?
Well, I almost can't take it seriously. It is so unbelievable. In fact, my great friend, former Secretary of Energy and Governor of Texas, Rick Perry, and I were texting back and forth last night. Like, how does he even say that with a straight face when you think about the thousands, the tens of thousands that have lost their jobs, that their jobs are on the line in Pennsylvania and Ohio and all over the country? I mean, this entire farce that's happening from the left, where we have to address the climate crisis, and in so doing, we're going to create jobs, is just insane. It's pure lunacy, and I sincerely believe the American people know better. I really do. But to your point, I think we've got to keep making sure people understand. Listen, America has the cleanest air and the cleanest water in the world, while at the same time we became energy independent and began to move our energy, our fossil fuels, and our natural gas out of this country. Just the concept of lifting people out of poverty, while at the same time the geopolitical results of that and not being beholden to the Middle East for energy, is astonishing. And for Joe Biden to want to roll that back because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tells him that he has to, it's pretty heartbreaking for the country, but it is a really important opportunity to explain to Americans truly what's at stake.
Now, Brooke, I have to say this. I get very defensive of the Trump administration when they don't get credit where it's deserved. I can't imagine how you feel listening to this stuff. You must want to rip your hair out. So I'm offering that as a warning. This is going to increase your blood pressure, but I need to get your take on this because I was pretty flabbergasted. This is Nicole Wallace talking about Operation Warp Speed. This is cut 31.
So I don't know, again, on what planet we had rounded the bend. And Operation Warp Speed didn't do anything to get a needle into an arm. So a lot of disinformation.
The downplaying of the work that the Trump administration did it's kind of stunning.
Yeah, it almost stuns me into no words at all, which is pretty hard for me not to be able to find words. But I just, the good news is that the Operation Warp Speed, the president, I was there, the president was relentless, as he was in everything else, When they told him it would take 2 or 3 or 5 years to get a vaccine, that was the normal rate, he just said, no, that's not acceptable, and we will figure out another way. And sure enough, he did. The good news is the timeline speaks for itself. People know that hundreds of millions of doses were, on trucks and in hospitals before the end of last year.
Right.
For Democrats and for the President Joe Biden to try to say otherwise really shows you just the complicit nature, and the media to again let that message get out just shows you the complicit nature of the left and how they will say anything to win an election, whether it's true or not.
Brooke Rollins is from the America First Policy Institute. Brooke, where can people find your website and learn more about you guys?
Thank you so much. AmericaFirstPolicy.com, and on Twitter at the letter A, number 1, A1 Policy. So we'd love to have more and more friends. We can't do this unless we're all in it together, and really appreciate your time today, Grace.
Thank you so much, Brooke. It's a great organization. Everyone should definitely follow them. I've learned a lot just from checking out their website, so I highly recommend it. Now, we got to talk about free lunch. You heard a lot about free lunches during Biden's speech yesterday. Everything's a free lunch when you're a Democrat, but there's hope for conservatives. We are offering a free lunch here at Grace Curley Enterprises at the Howie Carr Radio Network. I've had my fair share of free lunches during my time at the Howie Carr Radio Network, so I can say this with confidence. Nothing beats a Viva Trattoria. I'm actually going to a Viva Trattoria in person tomorrow night, and I might get myself a cocktail. After, you know why, Jared? Because I sat through 20 to 25 minutes of Joe Biden. I'm getting a Cosmo. And if you guys want to check it out, I know you heard our VIPs call in this week. They raved about Aviva. It's absolutely delicious. You can win your VIP experience by going to gracecurleyshow.com and entering in your email. If you want in, all you have to do is go to gracecurleyshow.com and sign up. I'll be selecting a winner tomorrow. I can't wait. And when Marcy comes in, she brings the most amazing food. My new favorite is the eggplant club. It sounds wild, but it's so delicious. Jared's a big fan of the pizza. We get calamari. We actually have the VIPs choose so that we get a few mystery items. They also have 4 convenient locations in Marlborough, Maynard, Wrentham, and Westford. Takeout is available too. So to enter to win the Aviva VIP lunch, go to gracecurleyshow.com. That's gracecurleyshow.com. We'll be back on the other side. I'm going to open up the lines for the rest of the show. We have a lot more to get to. We're going to play a lot of Tim Scott as the show goes on. This is the Grace Curley Show.
Follow Grace on Twitter at @G_Curley.